Maggie was always curious about her husband's past. She loved him dearly, but he rarely talked about his past. They spent their entire lives together, yet there were things about him that she couldn't answer to this day. When they moved into their home, he insisted on building a separate office. Maggie agreed, but while moving in, she was told by her husband that she wasn't allowed to even enter the room. She took it as simply one of her husband's quirks, but when he passed away last month, she finally got the courage to look inside. Upon searching the office, she stumbled upon a safe. This changed the way she will remember her husband forever. Maggie gingerly walks into the room as her husband was still alive, carefully scanning her eyes across the room that had piqued her curiosity all these years. She spots a locked cabinet and decides to break it open instantly. What was going on with my husband behind my back? She finds the code to open the safe and can't believe what she sees inside. How could her husband keep this big secret from her for so long? Why didn't he feel safe enough to tell her? Maggie looked at the key in her hand. Her husband, Peter, kept this key on him at all times. Maggie had always wondered about his secret room, and now she could finally unlock it. So she decided to wait until after the funeral. It was all so sudden at the moment. Peter's death had come as a surprise, making her worst fear come true. Maggie always hated being alone. She loved her life with Peter. They did everything together, and now she was alone in this big house. They had built this house together, designing it from scratch and making it exactly to their liking. Peter insisted on creating an extra office space, even though he had already retired. Maggie agreed, thinking she could use that space as well. But after moving in, it became clear that she wasn't allowed in the room. The funeral will be in a couple of days. They have one daughter together, Eva. She lives abroad and will arrive tomorrow. Maggie asked Eva to stay with her until after the funeral so she wouldn't be alone. As they walk through the house, they pass the locked door. Eva asks her mother if she has the key, but she lies to Eva. "No, darling. Your father must have hidden it somewhere in the house before he died, but I haven't found it yet." Why did Maggie lie to her daughter? The funeral was beautiful, and Maggie was sad it was over. Her husband's coffin was buried, and the only thing she had left of her husband was this mysterious room. She caught herself feeling angry towards her late husband. It wasn't his fault he died suddenly, unable to say goodbye or write her a note. She wanted to open the room and get it over with but couldn't. A month goes by, and Maggie thinks less and less about that room. But one day she feels lonely and starts searching for something to connect her to her late husband. Maybe it is finally time for her to open the door and see what's inside. She finds all the courage she has and walks to the door. She stands before the door and puts the key in the lock. Her heart is pumping in her chest and her hands are sweaty. She pushes the door open. She doesn't move. She did not know how to react to what she sees. She had never been in this part of the house before. She stands at the door opening and looks into the room. But she never expected to see this. She couldn't believe her eyes. She can't help but feel relieved. It looks like an ordinary room. She sees a desk, a beautiful bookshelf with books she didn't even know they had, and a lounge chair in the corner. The curtains were closed, so she opened them to get a better look at the room. This is when the light revealed something more. When she opens the curtains, she sees one of the windows is open. That's strange, she thinks. Why is this window open? She closes it and turns around. Upon turning, she gasps. There is something else that the light revealed. She sits down in his chair and picks up the book. A tear rolls down her cheek. She misses her husband. This room still smells like him. But why was he so secretive about a normal room? As she continued to ponder this, she noticed something strange. She looked over to the other side of the room and saw a locked cabinet. Great, another lock, she thought. But this time, she didn't hesitate. She grabbed a heavy candle holder and pounded on the lock. To her surprise, the lock broke open pretty easily. She opened the cabinet doors and saw a huge safe. This must be why he locked this room up, she thought. This must be his big secret. This was not an easy safe to open. It was super heavy and had a 6-digit code. She tried a few codes, their anniversary date, and their birth dates, but nothing worked. Maggie grew desperate again. She had to know what was inside. The only way she could open this safe was if someone broke it open. So she called a locksmith who specialized in safes. He came the next day, and his mouth fell open when he saw the safe. "This thing must be 70 years old," he said to Maggie. Really? That old? She wondered why her husband had kept a secret from her for so long. Maggie wondered if her late husband had kept a notebook in one of his drawers. She needed to find the code because there was a possibility that the locksmith would fail. She started pulling everything out of his drawers. She searched and searched. She had almost given up hope when she saw something out of place. This must definitely be it. She wondered if she had put it there or if it had been there all this time. There was a little black box under the book he had read last. How could she have missed this? This would open up the whole mystery to her. She opened the box and found a little note. The note read, "My darling wife, if you read this, I will no longer be with you. I have seen this coming for a long time. You will probably find the safe and wonder what is inside. It will come as a shock, but I hope you can forgive me for this big secret. I will not make this harder for you than it already is. The code is 8.6520.3. I love you, my darling Mags." Maggie wipes the tears from her eyes. He had seen this coming, but didn't even warn her. What was so important in this safe that he couldn't tell his own wife? She was very curious and scared to open up the safe. She called the locksmith and asked him to bring the safe back. She was lucky he hadn't had time to start yet, so he brought it back the following morning. This was finally the time to get all of her questions answered. She tries the code, and here's a click. She twists the knob, and the door starts to open. It was a heavy door, and it creaked as it moved. She opens the door and sees a black binder. It was full of loose papers. She didn't realize what she was looking at first. How could this be? Her husband had always been secretive about his past. She had forgotten about this because she had stopped asking him. She never really knew where he came from or even met his family. He always told her he had lost his family in a horrible house fire. But this turned out to be a lie. She saw a lot of different family photos and letters from family members. He had been in contact with them for years, but why did he lie about it? Then she spots a little yellow paper. It was Peter's birth certificate, but it didn't look like an American birth certificate. She suddenly realized what it was. Peter wasn't an American-born man. He had left his family behind and immigrated to America. Maggie was mad that he didn't feel safe enough to tell her, but she could forgive her husband because she loved him too much. The relief, however, was that it wasn't anything worse was palpable, and as she closed the safe back, she vowed to keep her husband's secret for the rest of her life.